Hello. Tactics flow from a superior position, says Bobby Fischer. And I guess I believe him, and I thought I'd show you a game between Capablanca and Madison from 1929, just after Capablanca lost the World Championship, which seemed to show this very well. So I won't pay too much attention to the opening, give you a couple of comments about that, but just to see what happens as the two armies come into contact. We'll play d4, and normally I'd expect youngsters to reply with d5, which is an easy way to do a solid way to defend, but in this game Madison went knight to f6, which also stops you playing the e4 move if you wanted. So c4 instead, grab a bit more space in the centre. e6 by black, knight c3 by white, and now d5 would get us back to the sorts of lines that I hope you're familiar with, but bishop to b4, which is the Nimzo-Indian defence. And again, black is very keen to stop white playing the e4 move when black might be quite squashed. And also has got another idea to take on the c3 square, check, and takes back. And then we've had an interesting change that black's given up the two bishops, so white has two bishops, but their position's not very open, so the bishops might find it hard to get going. And also white's got this sort of mess of pawns over here, and perhaps they could be attacked. So that's some of the ideas, at least. I mean, the Nimzo-Indian's a proper grandmaster opening, so there's lots to it, but those are the basics of it. So Nimzo-Indian defence, white thinks, well, I'll support e4 a bit more, and I'll support my knight and play queen to c2. That undefended the d pawn a little bit, so black hits back with c5, and just to see if we can black waste time with the bishop, we'll play d takes c5. Black develops with knight to c6, which is fair enough, knight to f3, and now black does recapture on c5 with the bishop. And developing move now by white, bishop to f4. I think these days most grandmasters prefer to put it on g5, but it's looking at lots of key squares on f4 as well. d5 hitting back in the centre, so black looks as though they're doing okay. e3 by white, or white also doing okay. Just a move ahead in development at the moment, having got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces out, and black has just 3. So white carries on with e3, queen to a5 by black, nicely active, pinning the knight. White just calmly goes on developing with bishop to e2, so no strain or stress or trying to force anything at this stage by white, just happy to get the pieces out, get control of the centre. And now black returns to the theme of hitting this knight on c3. White doesn't see much point in doing anything about that just yet. Castles, and now bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and so black's got their wish that there's now double isolated pawns on this c file, so black might have some targets to attack there, but has paid for that in getting a bit behind in development. Black castles, and white plays rook on a to b1. So if you look at this position, I always say, if you don't know what to do, what's your laziest piece? Well, there's two lazy pieces for white at the moment, the two rooks, and white plays one to b1. Now why do that one play that rook rather than the other rook? Well, I imagine that black would also want to complete development, and by moving this bishop and connecting the rooks, and at the moment that's not so easy to do because white's now attacked the pawn on b7, so if you move the bishop out, it's going to get it's going to lose the pawn. And also I think white is thinking seriously about moving the rook up to somewhere like b5 and harassing the queen. So for example, if black now decided to defend, to develop the bishop by playing b6, so that takes the pawn out of an attack because it's defended, and also maybe prepares to move the bishop to b7. Well, now white's quiet development suddenly seems to turn up the volume. So we have bishop to d6 using one of these dark squares. Another consequence of taking on c3 is that black doesn't have a dark squared bishop. So we'll see how powerful this dark squared bishop is for white now. Rook to d8 and rook to b5 now by white. And where can the poor old queen go? Not a3 because the bishop hops backwards, not a4, it's attacked on a5. Well, better go to a6 then. And so that might still be awkward. Does white have to retreat the bishop because it's attacked by the rook? Well, white here can play a better move. C takes d5. And now if the rook moves, it's going to be an attack on the queen at any point. White's also attacking the knight with the pawn, and if black retakes with anything on d5, the white rook will take it and be able to keep it because of the attack, discovered attack on the queen. Now suddenly all of these tactics start to pop up without, as I say, without white having strained to do anything apart from just do good development. And I suppose the tactics are starting to appear because black's done okay with development in terms of keeping up. There's only one more move for black to connect the rooks, but black's given up the dark squared bishop, and it's just a little bit harder for black to complete development because they are behind. And so well, black's going to have a think about how to handle all this. Has spotted this threat on d6 and moves the queen to a3. So that's two ideas there. It's attacking some of these queenside pawns, which might be awkward for white, and it's also stopping the bishop moving into d6 as they might wish. White carries on development, develops the last piece into active play, and now rook on f to d1, hitting the d pawn, and so this line may well become open, this file. Move your rook to an open file, or a file you think might become open. So at the moment, if something like d takes c4 by black, and then suddenly we've got this possibility of bishop to d6 again. So that's using the open file and the dark squares. So black plays b6, hoping to complete development. And now it's hard to see how white can improve their position just by shuffling pieces. So white chooses to open up some lines in the centre. And now if black recaptures with a pawn, then white can hit the pawn again. And we've already seen that a move like d takes c4 can be met by bishop to d6, picking up the exchange with a bishop fork. So after c4, bishop to e6, perhaps by black, and now c takes d5, and if bishop takes d5, takes on d5, takes on d5, and takes on c6. So with the pawn move taking on d5 discovers, unmasks an attack down the c file. So again, some little tactics continuing to appear on the board, not because white's straining and pushing and arguing with black, but just by nice little developing moves and little pawn moves, and suddenly the tactics start to appear because black's all a bit behind in development and has got weak dark squares. So c takes d5, knight takes d5, and now not a move that you might have spotted as immediately threatening. Knight to g5, well, there's an immediate threat of checkmate, but I often say, well, it takes one move to make the attack, and it takes one move to defend it, and after those two moves, are you better or worse off than before? Well, actually, white thinks they are going to be better off than before, because if the knight goes back to f6 to defend it, well, now we've got our old friend bishop to d6 again, and if perhaps black can defend by playing after knight g5, g6, and now there's lots more dark square holes in black's position and no dark square bishop to defend them all, so white is going to perhaps hop the knight back to e4, perhaps thinking about playing into f6, certainly keeping this knight out of f6, and a move like c4 might be awful. So black looks at these various choices and makes another different pawn move, f5, very firmly blocking the queen's attack down that diagonal, and so it gets stuck at f5, and that may do. There are some disadvantages to it. This backward pawn appears, and there are now some loose squares that are appearing around the king. Right, so where do we go now for white? Well, we could save our bishop from being attacked by the knight, but rather than do that, white chooses to improve their position, improves the laziest piece again by playing an active move, bishop to f3, and this immediately starts to create some threats like rook takes d5, bishop takes d5 check, and bishop takes c6, and white gains two pieces for a rook, in fact a rook and a pawn, and at the moment black's rooks aren't being very threatening, whereas white's pieces very much are. In fact, after bishop takes c6, the rook in the corner is trapped, so white will come out at least an exchange ahead now. So that's a nice tactic to have appeared by bishop to f3. If the black knight on d5 takes the bishop, which I suppose is a possibility, that's got a simple refutation with bishop takes, and then white will take the knight and be a piece up. Dear, this is looking bad for black, isn't it? Bishop to f3, and now knight to d7. I suspect bishop to d6 is going to be nasty. It attacks the queen, but both of the knights are pinned, one by one bishop and one by the other bishop, and pinned pieces are pretending. Pinned pieces are only pretending to defend anything, so although the knights look as though they're each defending the other, neither can move, so white has got a choice of knights to take after the queen moves. If the other knight hops back to e7, then just c4 and knight to b4 perhaps, and white can just knock out the knight and play rook takes a8, and white's also got bishop to d6 in the post. So that's all pretty dismal for black. One last defence we need to look at. Queen takes c3, and takes on c3, takes on c6, and after a capture on d1, now in this position white's got two pieces for a rook, but is going to pick up this rook at some point and go I think a piece ahead. Does that make it after we capture? Yeah, a piece ahead. So this, apparently ordinary looking move, bishop to f3, and then suddenly black's facing defeat. Point made, I hope. No strain, just good development, and tactics are starting to flow from this superior position. C4. The actual defence chosen by Black, after all of that, the only one that they could see to hold it all together was Queen to C5, defending both of the knights, which seems useful. C4 by White, just softening up this long diagonal. And again, how can Black defend here? Knight to F6, Bishop to D6, and if instead after C4 Knight takes F4, well, we could capture straight back, but here's an in-between move, an intermezzo, a Zwischenzug they say in German. Rook to B5, chasing away the queen, and now the queen can't stay defending the knight. So queen goes back to E7, takes on C6, and not going to work out that well. Knight hops back, the rook goes. Black picks up the other knights, but now bishop back to C6, and after all of that chaos, White's won in exchange a piece for a rook, a minor piece for a rook. So knight takes F4 doesn't work because of this in-between move, rook to B5. So well done Capablanca spotting all that. C4, so the knight on the D file goes to B4 and harasses the white queen. I got interested in the game when I was going through it recently. Well, what happens if White takes on the B4 square, which might be okay, but instead White has a different idea in mind, playing Queen to B3, which is just moving the queen calmly out of the way, and guess what? White is threatening bishop to D6, and the knights are starting to wobble a little bit, but perhaps Black can hang on. And in this position, well, there's what can Black do here? The move they chose lost pretty straightforwardly, and it's hard to see a defence by now. Moving the rook doesn't look very enticing, and may fail to the same sort of tactic that we see in the game. Black actually played E5 with a notion of stopping the bishop ever moving to D6, and perhaps grabbing a bit of space in the centre as well. I mean, it's not totally proof here, because I mean White can just take the pawn themselves on E5, so it's a bit of a desperate move. In fact, White could have done that but didn't, and played a much more simple move, A3, again with the idea of taking on overloading all of these pieces that are trying to defend the knight, and if the knight moves away, or there's two captures on B4, this knight again on C6 is only pretending to defend whatever is on B4. So something like E takes F4, capturing the bishop, will take on B4, and now if the knight takes, then the bishop will take the rook. If the queen takes, the bishop will take the knight. If that, or take the queen. Either way on is pretty good. So that's not going to work. If the queen retreats, hitting the knight, well, takes on C6, and if the queen takes the knight, we'll pick up the rook, and if the rook moves, we can pick up the Black's knight, recapturing at last. Black's pawn rather, recapturing at last and defending the knight. So this is all pretty rough for Black, having lost another piece. So A3, and what on earth can Black do about this? Well, they chose to retreat to A6, and now White finished off with quite an interesting idea. I wonder if you'd like to just pause the video and see if you can find out how to finish off Black for yourself. Did you find it? So bishop takes C6 was the move, and this just a swap, is it? but this has got one more idea in mind, not to win the pawn, but it releases the c pawn, so white can play c4 to c5, discovered check. And well, if you put the bishop in the way on e6, that'll get taken. If you put the rook in the way, that'll get taken. You put the queen in the way, that'll get taken. So in order to avoid losing a piece, black can hide in the corner. But now knight to f7 check, and if rook takes, well, white will at least win an exchange, but if you see a good move, look for a better one. Rook to d8 check, and black's going to die of back rank itis. So knight to f7 check, not rook takes f7 then, but king to g8, and now white plays one of the prettiest mates you can make on the chessboard, a smothered mate with knight to h6 check, king h8, queen to g8 check, rook takes is forced, and now knight to f7, smothered mate. So what have we learned from that? Well, firstly, Capablanca's pretty cool, but the way in which he wins his games, I always, and it's not just me, I mean everybody likes Capablanca's games just because they just look easy. They're not easy, there's quite a lot going on under the surface there, but there's no strain, it's all rather smooth and elegant, and I think it shows in fact you don't need to strain very hard at the chessboard to make good things happen. So if you put your pieces in good positions, the tactics should start to work for you. As Fisher says, tactics flow from a superior position.